Hello, welcome. Please tell me how audio and video, internet connection, how all that's doing. Hello, Rick, Maria, and John and Audrey. Hello, Kim. So as usual, we're just giving it a few minutes to get started. Hope everybody is doing well. Staying warm on the East Coast. Staying free of fire on the West. We'll get started in about a minute. And we are going to be a bit more scripted today. I'm trying something a little bit different, at least for Dhammapalooza anyway. I think we're gonna fiddle around and try some different things and see what might work. Because I'm not quite sure the old way of doing things works. So we're gonna try some new stuff. All right. So let's get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sabbe sankhara anicchati yaddapanyaya passati atta nibindati dukke samaggo visuddhya. Sabbe sankhara dukkati yaddapanyaya passati atta nibindati dukke samaggo visuddhya. Sabbe Dhamma anattati yaddapanyaya passati atta nibindati dukke samaggo visuddhya. Verses on the three characteristics. Impermanent is all that is conditioned. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purity. Unsatisfactory is all that is conditioned. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purity. Without self are all Dhammas. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purity. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, friends, it's Monday night, so that means it's time for Dhammapalooza, the festival of Dhamma with the Maggaseka community. And as we have been doing Dhammapalooza now for 4 years, I started, I think, April 2020. I started Dhammapalooza, so maybe almost 5 years. At least this April, it'll be 5 years that we've been doing Dhammapalooza, and we've done it a certain way the whole time. And it could be it worked because especially in the earlier days, there was a lot more people attending the streams. It could be all different reasons, but after a bunch of years, I think it's time to mix and match things and kind of try to find out what Dhammapalooza is going to be going forward, at least until it's time for another change. And what I would like to do this time is I want to do the meditation first. I think we should start out Dhammapalooza with meditation, and that might be something good to do from here on in. And then afterwards, we can see how it goes in terms of Q&A and reading a sutta and things like that. But I'm thinking about having maybe different segments, you know, break up the hour and a half into different segments, and this time we're going to be doing this time it's time for Q&A, etc. So we'll see how that goes, but for now, set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you. We'll start by doing a mindful scan of the body, starting from the feet, moving up to the head. Most of you have probably heard me do these guided meditations many times, so I won't do a detailed one. Remember to pay close attention to the important parts of your posture, such as the position of the pelvis bones, the angle of the spine, etc. When you're ready, move on from the mindful scan of the body to follow in the breath. Take your 3 deep breaths. Let the breath go. Remember to lay down your burdens. Put your heavy backpack down and take a break. Follow the breath. You can pick up the backpack again later. Whenever you're distracted away, remember, acknowledge, let go, and return. No need to get agitated. And don't let yourself continue to be infatuated. Just do your best to let go and return to the breath over and over. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Always come back to the breath. The breath is home base. It's always there, doing its job, ready for you to come follow it towards a more calm and tranquil mind. Train the mind to follow the breath. To find peace in the breath. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and tranquil or not? As it does, you may begin to notice more subtle, deeper characteristics of the breath. See how the breath is changing from cycle to cycle. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. See if you can notice, pay attention, and stay with these deeper perceptions of the breath. Slowly start to open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it. Reflecting on the state of your mind before and after the meditation, and contemplating any experiences that stood out. All right, friends. So while we do that, we'll read some Dhammapada. Some of you who came in late are wondering, why are we doing meditation in the first half hour of Dhammapalooza? It's because we're switching things around and, playing around. We're going to see how Dhammapalooza is going to form itself in a new era, as it were. All right. So, but I think I like the idea of reading some Dhammapada in that post meditation just for a minute or two. I like that idea. I think it's good. Well, hello, Douse and Visaka and Randy. The self. If one holds oneself dear, one should diligently watch oneself. Let the wise man keep vigil during any of the 3 watches of the night. One should first establish oneself in what is proper. Then only should one instruct others. Thus the wise man will not be reproached. One should do what one teaches others to do. If one would train others, one should be well controlled oneself. Difficult indeed is self-control. One truly is the protector of oneself. Who else could the protector be? With oneself fully controlled, one gains a mastery that is hard to gain. The evil a witless man does by himself, born of himself and produced by himself, grinds him as a diamond grinds a hard gem. Just as a single creeper strangles the tree on which it grows, even so a man who is exceedingly depraved harms himself as only an enemy might wish. Easy to do are things that are bad and harmful to oneself, but exceedingly difficult to do are things that are good and beneficial. Whoever, on account of perverted views, scorns the teaching of the perfected ones, the noble and righteous ones, that fool, like the bamboo, produces fruits only for self-destruction. By oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled, by oneself is evil left undone, by oneself is one made pure. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. Let no one let one not neglect one's own welfare for the sake of another. How many times you hear me probably say this fairly often? This is where this is in the section on the self. Let one not neglect one's own welfare for the sake of another, however great. Clearly understanding one's own welfare, let one be intent upon the good. All right. Okay, friends. Oh. So I see there's a few questions. So I think now could be a good time for doing some Q&A. We have about an hour. So our meditation is done. So however this works out, we'll see. But since Rick is always usually good for one question at the beginning. So I see Rick has one. Bante, can you talk about developing intrinsic motivation for life and practice? Being able to let go of the need for external motivators. Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? That really is a hard one. I contemplate this a lot because, you know, I use like music to motivate me like in so many different ways in lay life. And when you're a monk and you don't have that, it's kind of like, oh man, like even like my mind is like if I need to like get pumped to go out in the cold or whatever, it's like, I the Rocky Four music plays in my mind. It's like, yeah, okay, like to get myself pumped up. That's not an easy. I can't claim that I have mastery over that one yet. Um, but in terms of like, you know, intrinsic motivation to continue with the practice is the most important. The day to day, your motivation's gonna like be iffy. Some days you're gonna feel very motivated, other days you're not gonna feel very motivated. But the more important thing is, you know, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years on, are you still on the path? Are you still a Magaseka, a student of the path? Right? That takes some motivation to kind of want to keep doing that. The path will give you little tidbits of insight, little kind of glimpses into the future. And it will say, guess what? You can do this. You can experience this. And then it takes it away because it was only very, very briefly, only very anicca experience. But you had that experience of, oh, I can do this. I just don't know how to fully do it yet. So you keep getting these little tidbits of insight, wisdom that keep you going, right? That motivate you. And you can't always depend on them. You can't be like, well, I'm kind of down in the dumps. I'm waiting for some insight. The causes and conditions for that to arise might not arise then. At that point, you have to be like, well, I know that as long as I keep practicing, they will arise. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I have to set the groundwork for that insight to arise. And when the time is ripe, it will. Right? Didn't we just read in the self, right? Nobody can purify another. There is no such thing as an external, maybe not external motivator, but there's no such thing as an external purifier. Right? When you realize like it's kind of up to you, well, there's two kinds of people when they realize something like that. The kind of people who kind of, you know, just fall apart, become nihilistic and hedonistic and whatever. Oh, I'm not going to be saved, blah, blah, blah. But the type of people like, oh, it's all on me. I guess I got to get down to business. I guess I got to practice. So you have to figure out which kind are you. You know, even if you're getting down to business is not very consistent. If as long as you're getting down to business and doing and following the path, developing the path, that's as good as it gets. Kim says, what sorts of things do you have trouble letting go of? Is there anything you still have difficulty with? But yeah, I mean, I still have my habitual coping mechanisms, right? The habitual coping mechanisms are the things that we do, um, we develop throughout our lifetimes to kind of cope with painful experiences. right? That just because I've been doing this for 20 years doesn't mean I've totally given those up. You know, if the situation is ripe and my mental state is bad enough, I'll, overeat, or I'll sneak food, or I'll use food as a kind of pleasant experience to cope with my unpleasant experience, even though knowing that, I mean, I've seen this enough. This is actually not going to help. I still do it anyway because I'm still, um, I'm still not awakened. So I have these deep seated that go back to childhood. These deep seated mechanisms that uh, we draw on, that we use. For some people it's alcohol, some people it's drugs, some people it's sex, some people it's video games, some people whatever. Video games was another one for me. But these kind of like it's this in the Salla Sutta, the simile of the arrow. The Buddha explains this. The Buddha explains that the only thing that a regular person knows to do when they experience an unpleasant experience is to drown it out with a pleasant one. Right? So I still have, these kind of desires of like unpleasant experience, or run after my old go-tos, even though I've been meditating for 20 years, even though I've been a Buddhist for 17 years, even though I've seen over and over again that actually maybe it only gives a very temporary relief from the pain. Well, my mind still goes to it. Not as much. I mean, they're nowhere near as powerful as they once were. Usually I have to be in pretty down situations. Like if I'm in a vegetarian place for a long time in my mind, I just have brain fog all the time, and I'm very aversive and very like this. I become extremely unskillful. Like not like horrible bad things, but like lots of small little unskillful things that I normally don't do. Which is why I've capped myself at only staying in a vegetarian place a month. Because by the third week I start my brain fog, and it's like, okay, by a month I'm out. So I don't have to get into these very unskillful states where I become very aversive and agitated, um, and not easy to live with. you know. So yeah, it's like, understanding your mind and understanding your situation like that, and how you react, and then setting the groundwork for that to not be that case, can allow you to overcome a lot of that. Like if I'm in like a really nice place, a supported place with a good group of monks and yada yada yada, I have almost no cravings whatsoever. It's just like they just fade away. It's like when I'm going to buy a giri. It's just like, you know, I can never need for anything. I have, brothers, I have everything there. It's just nice, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that's still the case. If I might be staying there for like 5 months this year. So we'll see after about 2 months if that's still the case. But those external factors do help a lot. They do. So I think that's probably the only thing that I have like trouble letting go of. I think that's it. Like I don't really have any. Yeah, the habitual coping mechanisms. Those are probably the most unskillful things I do, and I try to set the groundwork so I don't have to fight against them. But sometimes you do. Sometimes they are what arises. Not even if you're experienced. Well, some people think boredom is an unpleasant experience. So even if you're bored, your habitual coping mechanisms all of a sudden become, something to do. Like, so you have to be wary of these things. All right. Hello, Norma. Welcome. Good to see you. Or Sky. Can you talk about developing the reverence needed to get more samadhi, more metta? I have been a student since 2016. I don't know about reverence per se. I mean, this is an interesting kind of question. I've never heard this worded this way. Um, the best way to gain more samadhi is to practice satipatthana, to practice the foundations of mindfulness, because you have to you have to temporarily abandon or suppress or overcome the five hindrances and the desire for sensual pleasures to get into those deeper samadhi states. And having a mindfulness practice is a big factor in that. Buddha says this very clearly in a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. If you want to abandon the hindrances, practice satipatthana. So if you want to develop samadhi, practice satipatthana. I mean, it's even in the Noble Eightfold Path. Seventh factor is samasati, is satipatthana. Eighth factor is samasamadhi, jhana. And the eighth factor is supported by all the other factors. So in multiple places, the Buddha is telling you, if you want to get into deep jhanas, you practice satipatthana. Well, of course, you also practice, anapanasati and things like that as well. But even that, mindfulness of breathing, right? There's a key difference there. There's a key connection there of the sati. Reverence or maybe faith or something in getting into samadhis, that could probably help you let go of a lot of the mental proliferation and the worries and concerns and doubts and things like that. That could definitely be a very impactful, helpful thing in terms of gaining samadhi. And metta, well, metta is, you kind of are training your mind to abide in metta by doing, lots of metta practice, visualizations and saying words and things like that. But also, as your satipatthana develops insight and wisdom, your metta naturally grows. You don't even have to do anything. You don't even have to practice lots of metta, because your insight, when you have insight and wisdom, metta is it's just a given. It's just automatic, because you understand the nature of this hellhole called the samsaric state that we're all in. So it's just natural that you just have goodwill and friendliness towards all beings. So I think that's it for that. I see we have a good number of people with us, so that's very good. And I'm getting more mindful during meditation, but still running on autopilot during the day. That's because you're not carrying forth the ember of mindfulness. That's because you're in your mind. Meditation is only what you do when you sit on the cushion. If you develop the attitude that meditation is what you do every second you're awake, well, then every experience you have, you can practice satipatthana with, and then you won't be on autopilot for the rest of the day. Let me, here we go. There's the article. Check it out, where I talk about that. Developing the mindset of meditation in all activities. As long as you are conscious, you can practice. Doesn't mean you will. I mean, I can't say I can't think of one day where I was mindful from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. That's impossible for somebody who's not an awakened being. Um, but I could claim probably 80, 90% a couple times at least. I could, and maybe on a day-to-day basis, maybe 60 to 70% at least, of my day being very mindful. Um, and of course that comes from lots of years of dedicated practice and developing it, right? Developing the mindset that, this is what I do. This is not, or more like, I should say, this is who I am. Right? This isn't like something I do at such and such a time, such a place for a half hour. No, no, it's my whole day. It's me. I live this way. I live trying to be mindful and clearly comprehending of all that I engage in life. When you are able to develop your mindset to that, then you'll be set. You just keep practicing, keep investigating everything, and you won't be on autopilot nearly as much. These days, it's the reverse, right? More and more people getting electric cars, more and more people getting the cars that can drive themselves. We're going to more and more things are autopilot. Or a person who practicing mindfulness is trying to take themselves off of autopilot. Okay? Rejecting autopilot, being mindful in all activities. Maybe I'll share this with you guys. Maybe we'll go over this article because I think some of you probably have never seen it. We won't go over the whole thing, but I think we can check it out maybe. The simile of the ember, carrying forth the ember of mindfulness. Oh, let's see, that's just introduction. Thus, then I will give you a simile, for it is by means of a simile that some intelligent people understand what has been said. You see this in the suttas many times before the Buddha gives a simile to somebody. In the past year, a simile came to me, and I've been using it when explaining aspects of mindfulness to practitioners. As a student of history and anthropology, I've long been fascinated with all things ancient human, and the simile of the ember comes from ancient times. Yeah, I don't want to read the whole thing. But the idea here, the simile of the ember, this is something that I would give, teaching retreats at Bhavana, especially because I coordinated all the retreats and I was giving little talks throughout the retreat, little kind of things. And I would give the first day, I'd give a meditation, a little talk on mindfulness of eating. And that talk on mindfulness of eating started with me talking about eventually the simile of the emperor, because simile that came to me, the simile of our ancestors, ancient humans, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 years ago, who developed a system to save a lot of time of carrying a barely alive ember from the fire the night before as they travel through the land, keeping it barely alive in a little kind of like leather bag of tinder and dried grass, etc. And then when they come to stop for the night to start the new fire, they don't have to go through a whole lengthy process of starting a fire. All they have to do is put the ember down in a little bird's nest of dried grass and stuff and blow on it, and then fire comes and they started a fire and saved themselves a lot of time. Well, in this simile, just like how the Buddha says, in this simile, such and such means such and such. In this simile, the ember is your mindfulness. The idea is that when you get up and you do your meditation in the morning, meditation in the evening, when you get up from that morning meditation, meditation doesn't stop. You take the ember with you. You get up, your mindfulness stays with you, and you bring that ember around with you throughout the day, whatever you're doing, everywhere you're going. And then you have it when you come home at night. You do your meditation and you mindfully go to bed. So, this is an important kind of simile to reflect on. So this is an interesting little section of this that I like. Fire is used as a simile in various ways through the teaching of the Buddha, from his proclamation that the world is aflame with the fire of craving, to the simile which equates a person's head to being on fire, their zeal to douse the flames with how diligent and zealous one should practice the Dhamma. Even within the roots of the words related to meditation, we find fire. Jayati, meditation, to burn, to be on fire, connected with the same root for jhana. Samadhati, to put together, to kindle a fire, connected with the same root for samadhi. Right? So to meditate is to burn, to be on fire. It is said that this practice burns away the defilements related to the cleansing aspect of fire, allowing the bright luminous mind to shine forth. See. In this simile, the ember is mindfulness. Yeah, I really go into this is quite a nice article. I like this article that I wrote many years ago, and I really went into detail on a lot of different things, which I'm not going to go over too much. I'm just kind of skipping around. Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful die not. The heedless are as if dead already. Zombies, Walking Dead. The people who are going around on autopilot are zombies. You don't want to be a zombie. All right. All right. So maybe, just maybe, we can read a sutta. It doesn't look like there's any other major questions. We have a half hour left. So why don't we read a sutta? Let's talk about being the Buddha's heir. Heirs in the teaching, Dhammadaya da Sutta. So I have heard At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants. Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, be my heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh. Yeah, this is amisa, niramisa. These are the same. This is the same wording that you find in the Vedana Nupassana, the Satipatthana, right? Of the body, of the carnal, of the body, of the flesh, and not of the flesh. So this is the same word. This is what this means here. It's like not of the be my heirs in the Dhamma, the higher Dhamma, not of regular, worldly things. That's basically what this means. Out of sympathy for you, I think, how can my disciples become heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh? If you become heirs in things of the flesh, not in the teaching, that will make you liable to accusation. The teacher's disciples live as heirs in things of the flesh, not in the teaching. And it will make me liable to the accusation. The teacher's the teacher's disciples live as heirs in things of the flesh, not in the teaching. If you become heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh, that will make you not liable to the accusation. The teacher's disciple live as heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh. And it will make me not liable to the accusation. The teacher's disciples live as heirs to the teaching, not of things of the flesh. So mendicants, be my heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh. Out of sympathy for you, I think, how can my disciples become heirs in the teaching, not in the things of the flesh? Suppose that I had eaten and refused more food, being full, and having had as much as I needed. And there was some extra alms food that was going to be thrown away. Then 2 mendicants were to come who were weak with hunger. I'd say to them, Mendicants, I have eaten and refused more food, being full, and having had as much as I need. And there is extra alms food that's going to be thrown away. Eat if you like. Otherwise, I'll throw it out where there is little that grows, or drop it into water that has no living creatures. These are actually all monastic rules. So this is the Buddha explaining kind of like the proper etiquette for these things. Then one of those mendicants thought, the Buddha has eaten and refused more food, and he has some extra alms food that's going to be thrown away. If we don't eat it, he'll throw it away. But the Buddha also said, be my heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh. And alms food is one of the things of the flesh. Instead of eating this alms food, why don't I spend this day and night weak with hunger? And that's what they did. Then the second of those mendicants thought, the Buddha has eaten and refused more food, and he has some extra alms food that's going to be thrown away. If we don't eat it, he'll throw it away. Why don't I eat the alms food, then spend the day and the night having gotten rid of my hunger and weakness? And that's what they did. Even though that mendicant, after eating the alms food, spent the day and night rid of hunger and weakness, it is the former mendicant who is more worthy of respect and praise. Why is that? For a long time, that will conduce to the mendicant being of few wishes, content, self-effacing, unburdensome, and energetic. This is an interesting one. I really I kind of relate to the second monk, because my whole life I've just had this issue of like, oh, I don't want to waste the food. I'll just eat. Like, I was the shark of my family. Like, nobody else ate leftovers, and so I just was eat. As I was like, oh, I don't want to waste the food. this whole starving kids in Africa thing you're growing. I don't want to waste the food. Well, what's the difference here? The one monk who didn't take the food, I mean, maybe they shouldn't do that forever, or like they need to kind of maintain their body. But I don't need it. I'm okay with it. So like they're being okay with less. The other monk is kind of feeling a little compelled, like a little, like yeah, I should have, or maybe a little tempted, and so then they eat it. Or it's not like it's not that the second monk broke a rule, or that the second monk is really bad and evil, or anything like that. It's just that the first monk, in the long run, because of that action, has trained in being with few wishes and content and having less. Because sometimes you won't have it. Right? So that's what this is. That's what this is talking about here. It's a very kind of refined lesson. Not too easy to see, just off the top of just reading it off the top of your head. Because for a long time, that will be conducive to that mendicant being a few wishes, content, self-effacing, unburdened, energetic. Let's see this, Bhante. So mendicants, be my heirs in the teachings, not in things of the flesh. Out of sympathy for you, I think, how can my disciples become heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh? That is what the Buddha said. When he had spoken, the Holy One got up from his seat and entered his dwelling. Then soon after the Buddha left, Venerable Sariputta said to the mendicants, Reverends, mendicants, Reverend, they replied. Sariputta said this, Reverends, how do the disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion not train in seclusion? And how do they train in seclusion? That is interesting. Noble seclusion, noble silence versus physical seclusion. I think this is okay. Let's see where this is going. Reverend, we would travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement in the presence of Venerable Sariputta. May Venerable Sariputta himself please clarify the meaning of this. The mendicants will listen and remember it. Well then, Reverends, listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. Yes, Reverend, they reply. Here, this is one of those things where, I don't know, they're using IS with, okay, never mind. Yeah, ISMO is yeah, that's better because it's a long lived. No, that's the right. Bhante Sujato, I think, no, does he use Reverend for Avuso as well? I don't know. Anyway, that's just a sidetrack of my own. Okay, so Sariputta said this, Reverends, how do the disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion not train in seclusion? The disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion do not train in seclusion. They don't give up what the teacher tells them to give up. They're indulgent and slack, leaders in backsliding, neglecting seclusion. In this case, the senior mendicant should be criticized on 3 grounds. You know what backsliding is? Maybe it's just because I'm a child of the 80s. But whenever I think of backsliding, I think of like Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk thing. Think of like monks who are like falling into not doing good things. They're like doing the moonwalk back away from the Dhamma. Backsliding is falling away from the Dhamma, right? So you see in the suttas in the Vinaya, monks, do not be masters in backsliding. Do not be leaders in backsliding. In this case, the senior mendicant should be criticized on these 3 grounds. The disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion do not train in seclusion. This is the first ground. They're not doing as the teacher tells them. They don't give up what the teacher tells them to give up. This is the second ground. They're indulgent, slack, leaders and backsliding, neglecting seclusion. This is the third ground. The senior mendicants should be criticized on these three grounds. In this case, the middle mendicants, majjhima. This is a term that you don't really see used much outside of Thai forest. Like the first time I was called a Majjhima monk, I think I was at a Bayagiri. Oh, you're a Majjhima monk. Majjhima is between 5 years as a monk and 10 years as a monk. You're a middle. You're a middle monk. You're like the sergeant, right? And the senior monks, the monks of 10 Vasa, in the Thai, the Ajahns, whatever, they're the senior monks. And then there's the middle monks, and then there's the novice monks. So I'm a Majjhima monk that has a little less than a year and a half until Tara monk, which sounds scary. But anyway, the junior mendicant should be criticized on these same three grounds. This is how the disciples of the teacher who lives in seclusion do not train in seclusion. And how do the disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion train in seclusion? The disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion train in seclusion. They give up what the teacher tells them to give up. They're not indulgent and slack, leaders and backsliding, neglecting seclusion. In this case, the senior mendicant should be praised on three grounds. The disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion train in seclusion. This is the first ground. They give up what the teacher tells them to give up. This is the second ground. They're not indulgent and slack, leaders and backsliding, neglecting seclusion. This is the third ground. The senior mendicants should be praised on these three grounds. In this case, the middle mendicants and the junior mendicants should be praised on the same three grounds. This is how the disciples of a teacher who lives in seclusion train in seclusion. The bad thing here is greed and hate. Yeah, that's interesting. Why does it? Greed and evil is probably a better translation. Huh. He translates papa as hate? All right. There is a middle way of practicing for giving up greed and hate. It gives vision and knowledge and leads to peace, direct knowledge, awakening, and extinguishment. And what is that middle way of practice? It is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. This is the middle way of practice, which gives rise to vision and knowledge and leads to peace, direct knowledge, awakening, and extinguishment. The bad thing here is anger and acrimony. Disdain and contempt, jealousy and stinginess, deceit and deviousness, obstinacy and aggression, conceit and arrogance, vanity and negligence. There is a middle way of practice for giving up vanity and negligence. It gives vision and knowledge and leads to peace, direct knowledge, awakening, and extinguishment. And what is that middle way of practice? It is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. This is the middle way of practice which gives rise to vision and knowledge, leads to peace, direct knowledge, awakening, and extinguishment. This is what Venerable Sariputta said. Satisfied, the mendicants approved of what Sariputta said. Bante, if we have time, a friend is asking if the fifth precept applies to when they drink without getting intoxicated. What is the harm if no intoxication? The harm is the same harm of the monk who chose to eat, right? Yeah, maybe there's not a gross harm. This is such a common question. Mostly it's like translating, what's the harm of having one glass of wine for dinner? Science even says it's healthy. Like there are studies that say, having a glass of wine, even if there's studies that say having a glass of coffee every day or whatever will do something. I probably don't need wine or coffee, to be honest with you. But it's a kind of justification of our desires, of our cravings. So is drinking, or taking some kind of drugs to not an excess, is that breaking the precepts? Yes. Um, is it as bad as taking those things to excess? No. But in the end, what the fifth precept is a sacrifice. It's letting go. In the end, most people will get to the point where, you know what? I don't even need this at all. I can just let it go. I want to follow the fifth precept. And then they let it go. So that's what I would say. I think there's implications both on a gross level and a subtle level. But in the end, it's about sacrifice and letting go. That's what it is. All the precepts are that. But the fifth precept is not necessarily seen as an evil act, especially in kind of like modern Western circles. In ancient, I mean, like, religions like Islam, and Buddhism, like, alcohol being a bad thing and kind of be seen as like to avoid is a pretty common ancient religious thing, because it leads to unskillfulness, even if it doesn't. If you are training and trying to be clearly comprehending and mindful, intentionally taking an intoxicant is kind of going against that. You're intentionally not being clearly comprehending and mindful. Now, of course, then you might even trick yourself. You're like, I know, I want to understand what it is, how it is to be mindful while you're drunk. And then you do that. It's like, okay, I'm going to be drunk. I'm going to try to be as mindful as possible. And when I was a brand new Buddhist, and I was years out of college, I basically, once I was done with college, I basically had like a pina colada or something, a couple times a year. I almost never drank, even before I was a Buddhist. But there's a few times where I was like, kind of like in my early mindfulness days, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a new experience. I'm going to try to be mindful and examine. And actually, there's some validity to that. I'm not going to lie. There is some validity, but there can also be a lot of delusion, depending on what you want. That's what I would say. If the person there's way worse things than not following the fifth precept. If the person can, um, if the person can always try to not be drink to a point where they're unmindful and unskillful, that's good. That's to be commended. Actually, um, that's not bad. But it's an extra level of skillfulness in totally letting it go and totally giving up having any intoxicants at all. That's what I would say. I hope the friend is there to hear this, or you can send them the link at about an hour and 20 minutes in, or hour and 16 minutes in or so. I answered this question, something like that. Tian Gao gives a very good answer from a traditional Buddhist perspective. How much you're willing to observe the precept, you get the corresponding amount of benefit. It's a matter of faith in the Buddha's teaching, not negotiating how bad a harmless drink could be. It's a very good traditional Buddhist answer. I like it. All right. So let's see, what have we done? We've pretty much done today everything that we normally do in a Dhammapalooza. Well, we did meditation, we did sutta reading, we did Q&A, we read Dhammapada. See, I'll see if there's any. Uh-oh. Hmm. All right. Ah, hello, Gautam. Gautam, I'm probably going to be going to Bhante Rahula's place sometime in end of April to May. So I'll be contacting you to see if I can, get some support for that. As I'm planning my year, different things. I'm currently in the midst of trying to plan 2 months in Colorado right now, which is interesting. Um, between 5 or 6 different places to stay, airplane tickets, all of that stuff. Lots of juggling. All right. So you know what? I think we can. I think we can call it a night. So we come close. Now I would normally share the sharing of merits, but I don't have it. So because my computer died like a month or two ago. Actually, was it 3 months ago? I don't know. I remember. I got a new computer, and there's a bunch of things that are um, discombobulated still, so I can't share the uh, the sharing of merits. But I'll just do it anyway. Rick says the format was quite engaging, very good. Yeah, and I felt a little bit energetic tonight, and we had more people join. So overall, I think it was a much better stream than compared to for a long time. So very good. Let's keep this going. All right, friends. So let's do the sharing of merits. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata chamehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata jabumata deva naga mahiddhika punyang tang anumoditva, charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may those find relief. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. May all beings share this merit of ours. May they be free from suffering and eventually attain the sweet bliss of Nibbana. All right, friends. So, Sukhihotu, may you be happy and at ease, practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which could be tomorrow morning for Morning Monastery Experience. here at the Indonesian Buddhist friends family of New York City. We have this wonderful Buddha Rupa to do our morning monastery experience from every morning, 8 a.m., Monday through Friday. Or perhaps we'll see you next week if I'm alive for another Dhammapalooza, 8 a.m. or 7 p.m. New York time, Monday night. Have a good week.